Testing 1, 2.
The little bird told me today's your birthday.
It is.
Testing.
So who is this person?
I didn't even tell you they asked about me.
No, I think that's it. I think that was this one. You made reference
That's the body. That could be. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Oop. There goes Steve's book. Welcome to St. Mary's Church and our first night of our parish mission. I'm glad that you're all with us. I have the privilege and honor of introducing the presenter of our parish mission. What I've discovered over the last few days that he is a man with many names. Many of us know him as S. James Meyer, a speaker and best-selling author of several books, including God Plays a Purple Banjo, How to Talk Catholic, Jesus Wears Socks with Sandals, as well as Living with Real Presence, Eucharist as an Approach to Life. The latter being how many of us came to know him and what led us to invite him to lead our parish mission. In addition, he is a Catholic deacon in the Diocese of Green Bay, Wisconsin, and co-founder of Streetlights Outreach and Whatsoever You Do Incorporated. As well, he is a husband to his wife, Michelle, and father to 3 sons, Adam, Alex, and Jacob. What I also discovered, however, is that he is also known, or to many, as Oscar Meyer, because his Catholic high school of some 350 students had 3 young men named Steve Meyer. Evidently, it was a popular name around the time he was born. So being the one coming from public school and to avoid confusion with the others, they decided to call him Oscar. And many of his fellow students didn't know his real name until his name was announced as he walked across the stage to receive his diploma. All kidding aside, those of us who have gotten to know him better know to call him Steve, which is fitting given that he is so down to earth and in touch with who he is as a human being, a beloved child of God. Having now read 2 of his books, I've come to appreciate that Steve is a keen observer of humanity, that is, of human beings being truly human. And he has a gift for using those insights through inspired storytelling to bring alive the gospel of Jesus Christ, the one who came among us as truly human to reveal to us the face of the divine. Those of us who were here for Mass in our parish this last weekend experienced firsthand these gifts in Steve's preaching. It is my hope and expectation that we will be graced even more so in Steve's presentation tonight. So without further ado, I ask you to join me in welcoming Steve for this first evening of our parish mission.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You've been very kind and generous, and I've been gifted and blessed to have been welcomed among your community these last few days. And hopefully after tonight, tomorrow as well. We'll see how that turns out. Everything about the story that Father John shared is true, except the part that I actually ever graduated from high school. But that is true. Let us begin, if you don't mind, with just a little bit of a reflection on Scripture, and then we'll go into the mission prayer. I hope you were able to get on your way in. This is from 1 Corinthians. For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night he was handed over, took bread, and after he had given thanks, broke it and said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, also the cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." So if we could pray together the mission prayer, which we'll share the next few days. Loving Christ, bread of life, wine of compassion, you broke yourself open and poured yourself out to become one with us, for us, in us, and among us. Open our hearts to love as you love, to forgive as you forgive, to serve as you serve, and to break ourselves open and pour ourselves out for others, bringing your real presence to all God's people all the time. Amen. What I remember most from my first communion, a couple of things. First, I remember that my parents gave me a rosary, and my godparents gave me $5. And I left that day thinking, my godparents love me more. There's so much I didn't understand. The other thing I remember is that Sister Mary Alice, who prepared us for First Communion, had us all create these banners. We had to make these banners out of burlap and cut out felt letters out of, and glue them on and get them all set. And we had each been given a list of maybe 6 or 7 different passages from Scripture to use on our banner. We could choose which one. And the one I chose was, "Do this in memory of me." Now, I don't want to brag about how advanced I was as an 8-year-old or how prodigious I was. But the reason at 8 years old I chose, after much thought and deliberation, to use "do this in memory of me" is because of the choices given. It had the fewest letters to cut out and paste on. That was it, because I was 8. And so I did that, and then Sister Mary Alice noticed that I got some of the glue onto the face of some of the felt letters. And that wasn't acceptable. So I had to come after school and redo it. And Sister, she really loved my dad a lot. My dad was a carpenter, and he would often go over to the convent to do maintenance and fix things that were broken or needed repair or such things. So she really liked him a lot. And I always thought to this day that Sister Mary Alice would have been a really good Pharisee, because she really loved the Father, but wasn't so sure about the Son at all. But my parents, after my first communion, my parents hung that banner in our dining room at home. And the stairs from the bedrooms upstairs came down into the dining room. So to get upstairs, downstairs, we passed through a lot. And every day for a number of years, I saw that banner hanging on the wall, "Do this in memory of me." And as I grew older, I began to realize that those words, I think, mean something. And it's not about the number of letters, that there's meaning behind them, but it was all sort of mystery. And we went to Mass every week, and we did this in memory of me. But I thought it seems like they should mean more than what we do 1 hour a week as we move forward. So I began to open that up and walk with that in my life. And so let me just read to you from Living with Real Presence. When Jesus completes the foot washing in John's Gospel and says, "As I have done for you, you should also do," is he speaking physically or directionally or both? Does he literally mean that we as disciples ought to routinely wash each other's feet? Wisely, we have interpreted this as a reference to his larger meaning. Make yourself the servant of all. We would all agree that nurses, kindergarten teachers, trash collectors, social workers, firefighters, and so many others are modern-day foot washers. When we volunteer at a food pantry, read to residents in care facilities, help a stranger jumpstart his car, or bring cookies to a single mom, we are in fact washing feet. Likewise, when Jesus offers the imperative to do this in memory of me, is he talking about a literal, specific action? A directional way of life? Or both? As Catholics, we readily embrace the narrower meaning, the literal, specific action. Thus, we gather around a table and ritualize the recreation of the event. All's good. But there's a deeper, broader, and more profound message in the imperative, do this in memory of me. And it hinges on a spiritual pursuit of a very simple question. What is the this we are being asked to do? What is the this we are being asked to do? Oh boy. The easy and obvious answer is exactly what we do on the surface. We gather in a room, invoke the Holy Spirit to turn bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ, and we share it with each other. But as incredible and beautiful as this can be, let's be honest. It's the easiest and narrowest adherence to the directive to do this in memory of me. In fact, this is so simple that we've decided even second graders can do it. As we grow in our spirituality, we seek a broader and a deeper understanding of the mystery. What is the action, the do this, beyond the narrow scope? What did Jesus actually do that he is telling us to do? And I submit he did and is instructing us to do 4 things. He took the bread and the wine first. Second, he broke himself open. Third, he poured himself out. And fourth, he shared himself with others. If we accept the paradigm, if we accept the premise that these elements really are the body and blood of Christ, which absolutely we do, then we have to accept that it wasn't just the bread and the wine he was breaking and pouring. He said, this is me. This is my body. This is my blood. And he took it and he broke it open and he poured himself out and he shared it with others and said, now you go and do the same. Do this in memory of me. And I think it's valuable to understand that what he took from the table, the bread and the wine, were just the elements that were there. The fruit of the vine, the bread of the earth, the work of human hands. And indeed, we draw attention to that at Mass. This is the fruit of the vine and the work of human hands. He grabs it and he breaks himself open. He says, I'm not going to hold myself back. I'm going to break myself open and I'm going to pour myself out for you. Now, would you do this in memory of me? It's a big ask. It's a lifetime challenge. And it helps if we understand 2 Aramaic terms. Now, Jesus, in his ordinary everyday language, spoke Aramaic, similar to Hebrew, but its own language of right. Through the centuries, we have not known a lot about that language, But thanks to the emergence of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library and some other things and some great scholarship, we've learned a lot about that language. Now, we in the West, in the United States, we speak English, and English is what we would call a denotative language. Our words start with specifics. They refer to things, and then we put them together to build up to concepts. But a lot of Eastern languages, including Aramaic, I'm borrowing from the Aramaic scholar Neil Douglas Clott, so please don't think I'm this smart. That Aramaic is much more of a conceptual language, where the words refer to big ideas, and then what those ideas mean depends on the context that you're using it. So 2 words we want to pay attention to. The first one is the word Dhamma. The Hebrew is Dam, D-A-M. The Aramaic is Dhamma. Dhamma means really the flow, the essence and flow of life. So let's just take one step back for a minute. The people of this time didn't understand a lot about biology. They didn't understand a lot about anatomy, how life works. But they understood that if you took a grape and you squeezed all the juice out of it, that the juice remained good and vital, and if you treated it well, it got actually better, right? And it was filled with the life. The life flowed into that juice. The husk of the grape, if you didn't consume it right away, lost its value. So this word Dhamma, which incidentally, and I don't believe by coincidence, is also the root of the word Adam in our Genesis creation story. God, the name given to the very first human life form, Adam, in the Genesis narrative. But it's Dhamma. So just as the juice of the grape remains vital, so too does the blood of the person. They knew that if you bled out, you would die. So they believed that life, the essence of life, flowed through fluid. So the word for the juice of the grape and the blood in the human person or in the animal, which is why kosher butchering was so important. You had to drain all of the life and vitality out. It's the same word. The juice, the blood, the flow of life conceptually, it's all the same thing. So when Jesus takes this cup and says, "This is my blood," this is the cup of my blood, he's saying, this is the essence of everything that flows in my life. My hopes, my dreams, my promises, what I've taught you, what I believe, the love I share. This is the essence of everything I am and my life flowing. The second word is lakma, L-A-K-H-M-A, lakma. Lakma is an Aramaic word that refers to the husk of the grape, the flesh of the body, the meat of the animal. It's the part that comes from the earth itself. When he says, "This is my body, this is my lakma, this is the substance from which I am made," this isn't just, the noun, the narrow denotative word we think. It's the conceptual word, dhamma, or lakma. So when he's saying, "This is my body, this is my bread," if we understand the language he spoke, he would have been saying, this is the substance and the essence of who I am. This is all that I am. And I break it open, and I pour it out, and I give it to you, and I invite you to bring it into yourself and to take it forward in the world and to do the same. Do this in memory of me. And it's so powerful. It's so powerful when we think about it in terms of the substance and the essence that has created us and flows life through us. It becomes actually very beautiful, the essence and the substance of who we are as people. For us to do that, we need to come to terms with this idea that it only has value in relationship with others. I want to borrow a story from God Plays a Purple Banjo. It's called Miss Eleanor and Reuben. At the age of 83, Eleanor Madison is a stately, sophisticated lady of considerable means with a tack-sharp mind and a flawless memory. She's well-traveled and well-read and very knowledgeable about the world. Since losing her husband and her eyesight in a car accident 30 years ago, she has lived in an apartment in the Westminster Hotel in Spokane, Washington, a classic exclusive hotel with bellman and valets that was originally owned by her father. Without her sight, she keeps her world small and familiar, and the hotel staff looks after her. At the age of 32, Reuben Whitehall has eagle-sharp eyes, but a mind and a memory that are lacking. When Reuben was 13, he stole his father's whiskey and was punished with a galvanized pipe to the left side of his head. His father went to jail, and Reuben went to a mental health center. Now, he supplements his meager disability payments by selling candy bars on the sidewalk in front of the Westminster, much to the chagrin of some staff members, but to the delight of others. On a certain Tuesday morning, Reuben was distracted by the fire truck and ran smack into the path of Miss Eleanor as she stepped out for her daily walk around the block. The ensuing scene was quite the spectacle, and half the hotel staff pouring into the sidewalk. Reuben apologized profusely as he scrambled to pick up his spilled candy bars. Someone threatened to call the police, and a couple of the front desk attendants insisted Miss Eleanor should return to the lobby and sit down. Miss Eleanor felt all the drama was excessive and undignified, and she chastised the staff for fawning over her, but giving no mind to the young man I so rudely walked into. Where is he? I should like to apologize. Once the doormen were calmed, an odd and unlikely friendship hatched. Reuben escorted Miss Eleanor on her daily walks, which soon expanded from the block and wandered throughout the neighborhood. He loved listening to her memories of college football games, African safaris, and European trains. And Miss Eleanor delighted in Reuben's innocence and curiosity. She loved the way he described the people and cars on the street as though he was seeing each one for the first time. Then she got an idea. Miss Eleanor would see the world again through Reuben's eyes, and he would see it for the first time with her as his guide. They took a cruise down the Rhine, visited the pyramids, and watched whales in the Pacific. Everywhere they went, it was hard to tell who was serving whom. Who was the sheep? Who was the shepherd? This is what the Good Shepherd relationship invites us to share. It's not about power or control, not about the shepherd being dominant or the sheep being submissive. It's about mutuality and shared giftedness. It's about nourishing one another with dignity, growth, and discovery. When Jesus says, I know mine and mine know me, he is speaking with intimate reverence. When we know someone, really know someone, we know their strengths and their weaknesses. We know their faults and their gifts. We choose to overlook the imperfections, and instead we enrich ourselves with their giftedness. We have the opportunity to bring the Good Shepherd dynamic to all our relationships. We can be good shepherds with our spouses, our children and grandchildren, and our parents. We can be good shepherds with our co-workers, employees, and supervisors. We can be good shepherds with friends, neighbors, brothers, and sisters. We can be like Miss Eleanor and Reuben and overlook the brokenness, honor the giftedness, and raise each other up. Just as surely as we raise up the bread and wine in Eucharist, we can raise each other up. We can break ourselves open. We can pour ourselves out. And that means our talents, our giftedness, the treasure, the substance, the essence of who we are. We can break that open and pour it out and share it with one another and feed them just as surely as Eleanor and Miss Reuben and Miss Eleanor and Mr. Reuben in that story break themselves open and pour themselves out and give it to one another and raise each other up in the process. We can do that if we choose. Do this in memory of me. Do this in memory of me. So we have to ask ourselves, where are the relationships? What are the relationships that we have and we hold close, that we are invited to break ourselves open and pour ourselves out with? I'm going to take you back now to 7th grade English class, or maybe 9th grade English class, depending on when you got it. But in studying literature, there are 5 foundational conflicts, or 5 foundational relationships. Our relationship with God, our relationship with self, our relationship with other people, our relationship with society, and our relationship with creation, with nature and the earth. And we are invited to be Eucharistic people and bring the full substance and essence of ourselves, broken and shared, to each of these relationships. So the foundational question in the first one is our relationship with God. We have to ask ourselves, do we pursue that relationship with a sense of servitude or with a sense of seeking self-affirmation? Are we mostly in relationship with God so that we can feel good or better about ourselves? Are we hoping God blesses us, raises us up, lifts us up, what's in it for me? Or are we coming to the relationship with a sense of awe, mystery? Let me break myself open. Let me be a servant in this relationship. God, how can I be a conduit through which your substance and essence flows into the world? How can I bring you to life, flowing through me? Am I here as a consumer to receive, or am I here as a conduit to let the Spirit flow into the world through me? It's a great question in examining our relationship with God. How do we approach it? Second one is our relationship with self. Are we looking for enriching growth or self-protection? Why do we do any of this? Are we willing to go through the process of growing, evolving, developing? Or are we just looking to look out for number one? Maybe I do religion so I can get to heaven. I'm really just, or at least not go to hell. Is this all about fire insurance? I mean, are we doing all of this because we want to grow deeper, wiser, more intimate, more loving, ever expanding into the holy oneness of Christ? One body? Or are we doing it still just in individuals, focused on individualism, being consumers of religion for our own selves and our own self-protection or self-preservation? Eucharist asks us, invites us to break ourselves open, pour ourselves out, and share ourselves with others, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, allow others to see the brokenness in us so that we can share with one another and flow out. Third relationship is our relationship with other people. The relationship with self asks us to be vulnerable. In our relationship with others, are we companioning with people, or are we really just self-advancing, looking to advance ourselves forward? When I come from the 1980s, and coming into the business world for the first time, there was so much emphasis placed on networking. The advice I got, and the books I was reading, the tapes I was listening to, they were all saying, choose friends that can help you advance your career. And at the time, even then, I thought, it kind of feels like objectifying people. Kind of feels like choosing people for my own benefit, as opposed to asking myself, how can I serve others? How are we doing on time? Are you keeping track? I don't want to overstay my welcome. But, it's like, I have stories to tell. When I was going through my diaconate formation process 20 years ago, every year we had to sit down with our deacon, our director, who I affectionately called the deacon master, and his name was Paul Grimm, and great guy. And I was reminded of the story in a conversation yesterday that I had to do my annual check-in with him. Life was really busy for me. My kids were still small. They were all just at home. None of them could drive yet, So life was, I was working 50 to 60 hours a week. I was taking all of these academic classes for formation and reading books and writing papers and busy serving at the church and coaching a couple of soccer teams for my kids. And I went in to see Paul, and I scheduled it at noon thinking I'm going to get this done in 10 minutes and get out of here and on to the next thing. And I sit down with Paul, and he goes, so, how's Michelle? I said, Michelle, by the way, is my wife. People like her better than me. I do too. I don't want to brag. Again, I try to be humble. I have a lot of Benedictine formation in me, so I really value humility. I don't want to brag, but really seriously, because of me, a lot of people pray for Michelle. So I didn't. I wanted to, say Michelle's great. The marriage is great. The academics are going fine. Job's good. Faith is good. 7 minutes, I'm out of here. And then he says, so how's your social justice? How's your social outreach going? All right. Now, this had been part of my life since a child. I had always been doing something, volunteering, doing things. But when I started in diaconate formation, something had to give. Something had to give. So it was the volunteering. It was that stuff. And I was explaining this to Paul. I can't wait to get done with this. I can get back to what I've always done, which is serving in the community. And he just shook his head, said, no, you can't wait. You have to be doing it now as part of your formation. And I said, I don't know when I'm going to do that. Now, we had classes all day on Saturdays. We had one Saturday off a month. And Paul said, well, you don't have class every Saturday. You could do it then. And I said, that's great, Paul. Why don't you pick up the phone and tell Michelle? Because I'm not going to. And he passed on that offer. And basically just said, you got to figure it out. So the next day I was having lunch with my old high school classmate who was working in lay ministry formation in our diocese, and I was telling him the story, and Tony said, well, too bad, too sad for you, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know exactly what, but whatever I do, it has to be after 10 o'clock at night, because I'm not taking any more time away from my family, from Michelle and the boys. So I have to do something after they're all in bed. And I went on, I said, the way I figure it is all of the services for people serving others are closed at that time of day. But there are still people. The people don't go away. So I'm just going to take a lawn chair and go sit out on a corner. And I told him which corner I had in mind, which was not a corner you need to be on at 11 o'clock at night. And I said, I'm just going to go there and see what the Holy Spirit brings my way. And Tony's like, that sounds like a great idea. That's pure gospel. I'll do it with you. And I'm like, all right, I'm not passing. So much easier when someone else is there. Besides, I can run faster than he can. So we go out there, we start doing this that weekend from 10 to midnight. That was the birth of Streetlights Outreach. Now, I have to admit, my initial impetus for doing that, service to others, wasn't about service to others. It really wasn't. It was about serving Steve. It was about getting one more thing done that I needed to get done. It was self-advancing, moving myself forward, meeting the requirement. We started in early May. At the end of this, actually into fall, we were like late September, early October. We were out on the street corner one Saturday night. It's a little bit quiet. It's about 11 o'clock in the evening. And I looked at Tony and I asked, how do we evaluate the value of this effort? How do we know if it's worthwhile? And he looked at me with a little bit of perplexion, saying, what do you mean exactly? And I said, well, we've been coming out here for 5 or 6 months every weekend, and we've encountered a lot of people. We've talked to a lot of people, had a lot of conversations. But the number of people we've helped, that we've been able to get to the shelter or get to the crisis center or get them something to eat because they haven't eaten in a couple of days. The number of people we've actually helped, we could count on our fingers, honestly. So how do we evaluate and determine whether this effort is really worth doing? And before he could answer, this guy walks around the corner. He's wearing a blue hoodie, the hood up, he's got his hands shoved in his pockets, and we have a banner that says Streetlights Outreach, and he looks at us sitting in these lawn chairs and says, what are you guys doing? It's a question we were accustomed to by now, and we had our answer. Said, we have this little thing going called Streetlights Outreach. We're out here to just help people where they need help. People who are in a tough spot, need help finding the crisis center, getting to a shelter, people haven't eaten in a few days. That's why we're here. So if you come across anyone, know anyone in that situation, or ever find yourself in that spot, we're your guys. And this gentleman shook his head. Said, nah. The people out here on the streets, they know where the shelter is. They know where the food programs are. They don't need you for that. That's not what you do. And then he went on. He said, here's what you do. You come out here every week and you look into people's eyes and you see into their hearts and you remind them that they're good people worthy of God's love. No one else does that. They go to the shelter, they fill out paperwork, they get processed. No one takes time to really listen to their story. They go to the food program, they get processed through the line. Their hunger, physical hunger is met, but their process, no one actually sits with them and gets to know their story. You guys come out here every week and you encounter people and you have conversation and engage with them and you look into their eyes, you see into their hearts, and you remind them they're good people. That's what you do. And then he turned around and walked away. And I turned to Tony and said, never mind. Had my. It was a jolt. It was a jolt. The value of what we do is in being present with others. We cannot experience and share. Fourth point, share it with others. Break yourself open, pour yourself out. Be vulnerable and share it. We can't share that real presence if we are not really present. In our relationships with others, Eucharist calls us into real presence, companioning others and being present with them through all of the difficulties, challenges, pains, frustrations of life. To be there and companion with them. So as we go through relationships with others, are we merely self-advancing, as I was at the beginning of that summer? Or are we truly companioning, as I transformed into by the end of the summer? And to do that. The fourth relationship is our relationship with society. Are we serving the many, the few, or the one? We're reminded of how are we doing on time? Here goes Steve. He's got another story. So thank you. It's like you're all victims. It's like Steve's entertaining himself. I was at home one day in my study writing, which is actually how my homily went the other day too. But see what I do at home. It's a Saturday morning, and the doorbell rings, And I come outside, and there's a guy standing with a clipboard, and says he's taking a survey, a poll. But I knew pretty darn well that he was campaigning. You know, it's how it works now. Campaigning disguised as polling. And he said, I have a question. I have a survey, but it's just one question. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I looked at him, and I stood back and looked up at the sky, and I kind of scratched my beard. The only reason to have a beard, by the way, is to do this. And I'm like, I said, you know what? I said, in the last year, I've learned quite a bit. I've grown some. I think my spirituality is deeper. So yeah, I'm better off than I was 4 years ago. And he kind of looked at me funny and turned and walked away. But I went back inside. I thought, what an odd question. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I recalled, from 1964, or 1961 rather, JFK's, inaugural speech, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And then I remembered the first time the question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, was 20 years later in 1981 or 1980 when Ronald Reagan was running, and he asked the question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And that somehow in 20 years as a society, we had gone from asking the question or making the statement, ask not what society, country, whatever is doing for you, ask what you can do for it, to are you better off? We moved from an ethos of contribution to an ethos of consumerism. In 20 years, we moved from a mindset that said, I am here to do something good and worthwhile and contribute and raise others up, to I am here to get what I can. So what is our relationship with society? What does a Eucharistic relationship with society look like? And I submit it looks much more like the farmer. Are we serving the many individually, as family units, as a parish community? Are we serving the many, or just the few, or the one? He took the bread and wine. He broke himself open. He poured himself out. And he gave it to others and said, do this in memory of me. Feed others. Bring the substance and essence of my love, my life, my everything I am to others. Do this in memory of me. The final relationship, the fifth, is our relationship with creation. Are we seeking to be harmonious with this creation? Or are we seeking to be exploitative of this creation? This earth, this air, this water, this substance of our lives. Are we seeking to be harmonious, one with it? Or are we seeking to be exploitative? Are we coming at that with a sense of unity and communion? Or are we coming at that with a sense of consumerism and what can I get from it? I want to read to you from Living with Real Presence. While I prefer to retreat to the lush richness of the forest or the quiet vistas of the mountains, Michelle will occasionally lure me into a hike in the desert. This is a very different experience with no trees, no canopy. The reality of my vulnerability rockets to anxiety level as soon as I get beyond sight of my car. The initial temptation to walk 50 yards, turn around, and call it a day has a powerful attraction. Why on earth would I want to walk farther away from shade, farther away from water, and farther away from the twin miracles of cold beer and pizza delivery? The hot sun, the parched earth, and the unseen dangers of rattlesnakes and scorpions take a neon highlighter to the fragile reality of human life. No, thank you, my brain says. Ah, but yes, please, my soul calls. So I journey on, but at a much slower pace than Michelle. Soon I lose sight even of her. After about 2 miles, the anxiety burns itself out like a cheap candle. Alone with God in the emptiness of a desert, life's stresses, pressures, doubts, and falsehoods are vacuumed out of me. I awaken to the realization that the sky is real, the earth is real, and love is real. Everything else is exposed as illusion. Deeper into the peace of nothingness, I finally emerge into the fullness of allness. Peace be with you, Jesus said when he entered the upper room. Peace be with you, we say before sharing Eucharist. The peace of real presence. This is where we find our Holy Communion, our sacred unity with God, neighbor, and all creation, now and forever. When we are able to live in communion with God, with self, with others, with society, and ultimately with all of creation, we are able to live in peace, harmony, and love. The gift of Eucharist opens our eyes and our hearts to this reality, not only as a future heaven, but as the real presence on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus, of course, understood this. He also understood that this Holy Communion is not something we can know intellectually. It is something we are blessed to engage experientially. Do this in memory of me. Please pray with me the mission prayer. Loving Christ, bread of life, wine of compassion, you broke yourself open and poured yourself out to become one with us, for us, in us, and among us. Open our hearts to love as you love, to forgive as you forgive, to serve as you serve, and to break ourselves open and pour ourselves out for others, bringing your real presence to all God's people all the time. Amen. Thank you so much. We'll do questions and answers. Thank you. Thank you. I'll open up to any questions or comments, or like Father John said, I did raise 3 boys, so I can do arguments as well. That works. But first, just a couple pieces of business. Someone asked if I would sign books afterwards. I'll stick around. I'll sign anything, whatever you want. I've got a new book, Live Like You Mean It, that isn't actually out yet, but Dave from our publisher, from Bayard Book, was able to get 100 of them or so that are available. That's coming out actually in another 10 days or so. So that's available. And so if you want to get the book in the back, and Dave will help you out. The other thing is I just owe so much gratitude so I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you and your community. I want to thank Father John, certainly, for his generous hospitality invitation. I want to thank Cheryl for her rock star promotion, recruitment, and unwillingness to ever take no as an answer. Thank you. And certainly, I want to thank Katie, for whom none of this would come together or happen. And Katie, if you wouldn't mind, I just want to thank you. So if you wouldn't mind coming here for a minute, because it's, Katie, thank you for all you do. Thank you for all the logistics. But the real thing here is it's Katie's birthday. So please join me. Happy birthday to you. Happy thing for obvious reasons. Any questions, comments, arguments? Yes. So the question was, after the story about being out on the street corner and that guy came by and set us straight. Did we stay out there? Yeah, that was 20 years ago. We're still out there. But did you ever see him? Never saw him again. God plants people in our path every single day. So I looked up from it to see where the guy, he went across the street. I looked to see where he went. Gone. I couldn't even see him disappear. So that was, so sometimes God is able to nudge us and inspire us. In my case, I usually need to get hit over the head. So he sent someone to do that. Yeah. So, thank you. Anyone else? Because stunned, speechless, dumbfoundedness is exactly what I was going for. And there's a reception in the back. So there's cake, there's birthday cake in the back, and refreshments. So, but any other questions? If not, think about them overnight. Where are we tomorrow night? At St. Boniface tomorrow night at 7. Thank you. Yes. Pardon me? Oh, no, it'll be a completely different presentation. New material. Better material. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you.